attack was carried out by a suicide bomber. Welcome back. You are watching Worldview. Many thanks for staying with us. Let's now get here into Kenya, where the countdown to the general election continues with just 76 days to the ballot. An important event in the electoral calendar will be the meeting between the presidential aspirants and the IEBC. President Uhuru Kenyatta and the NASA flag bearer Raila Odinga are expected to attend in person at a meeting to be chaired by IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati. Similar but separate meetings will be held in all the 47 counties and 290 constituencies between all elective candidates and IEBC returning officers. Let's now take a quick look at the important IEBC timelines before the August vote. Here on our Super Bowl, let's just see some of the things that these candidates will be doing as we head into the poll. So the clearance... Okay, let's take a look at the IEBC timeline, some of the things that will be happening. Of course, the candidates will be seeking to get all the necessary clearance from the IEBC. They will confirm non-membership to a party and pick application of forms. These are just some of the things that will happened on the 8th of May. So this is already long gone. 8th May, they picked a symbol for submission forms and submit a symbol of soft and hard copy. This has already been done on the 8th of May as well. Let's just take a look at some of the other things that are expected. On May 10th, there was approval of symbols by the IEBC. Took a while for a number of people like the independent candidates, but happened nevertheless. The 13th of May, the gazettement of names and symbols of candidates, transmission of names and symbols to the IEBC offices, as well as obtain forms for signatures of support. Remember, presidential candidates are also expected to hand over the signatures of their supporters to the IEBC. ODM did the same yesterday at the Anniversary Towers, which houses the IEBC. Training of law enforcement agencies. This happened on the 22nd of May, just the other day. All those agencies or all the people or staff will be involved in this very important exercise, which are the elections. They were trained. 28th of May, a few days from now, nominations for presidential elections and nominations for Senate elections as well. This is expected to happen on the 28th of May, which is about just 5 days from now. And finally, lodging and settlement of disputes arising from nominations. This is the 30th of May. The deadline had been pushed, so some of the disputes are still being settled by the political parties' disputes tribunal. So these are some of the things that just happened this particular month after the nominations, before the nominations, and during the nomination exercise. Also, presidential candidates are expected to hand over the signature of the supporters. Elective candidates are expected to meet their returning officers at the constituency level and the county levels. But joining me in studio now is John Kagusha, a governance expert, and Joy Brandam Devo, a lawyer and political analyst. So we will be discussing this timeline, just see whether IEBC is on course. But before we get into that, let's go to the Lillian Towers, where the IEBC is currently meeting presidential aspirants. Let's just cross over there and listen in before we get into the discussion.
8,000 signatures. We have received some, we have not received some of them, but we'll get into the specific details with each of the aspirants at the appropriate time. In addition, one needs to hold a degree from a university recognized by the relevant ministry. The requirements that I have outlined also apply to the running mate, that is the person who will be running as the deputy president. What are the disqualifications? There are a number of disqualifications that the Commission, under the leadership of Chairman Chebukati, will be looking at very carefully as we look at your documents. The first is that if you do not owe allegiance, if you owe allegiance to a foreign state, then you do not meet the qualifications to run as a president. You should, if you're a public officer or acting in any state or other public office, let me just explain that this qualification, however, does not apply to a sitting president, a sitting deputy president, or a member of parliament. So if you are a deputy president, you are president, or you are a member of parliament, you are not disqualified, so you can run for the office of the president. Another criteria for disqualifying one is if one has participated directly or indirectly in any public fundraising, or what we commonly call harambe, within 8 months preceding a general election or during an election period. So if we have evidence from voters or from Kenyan people that you have participated in a harambe during that period, then there is a reason for you to be disqualified as a candidate. This disqualification, however, excludes fundraising for purposes of an election, or if you're fundraising for a political party. So if you're fundraising for a political party or you're fundraising for yourself as an independent candidate, then you cannot be disqualified on those grounds. The next one is that we are guided by a rule of law. So our laws or our constitution then provides that you will only be disqualified if all possibilities of appeal or review of a relevant sentence or decision regarding disqualification are fully exhausted. So after all those mechanisms of law have been exhausted, then you will be disqualified. But as long as there is an appeal ongoing, then our constitution provides that the due diligence has to be done on that. Then another disqualification that singularly applies to myself and Chairman Chebukati and other commissioners is that at any time within the 5 years immediately preceding the date of election held office as a member of the Election Commission. Chairman, too bad for you. Then the next disqualification is that has not been a citizen of Kenya for at least 10 years immediately preceding the date of election. And then the next ones are that if you are of unsound mind, then you would be disqualified. Or if you are undischarged bankrupt, then you would also be disqualified. Also, if you are a subject of imprisonment of at least 6 months at the date of registration as a candidate or at the date of election, then you will be disqualified. Also, which is something that is very important to the chairman and to the commission, is that if you are found in accordance with any law to have misused or abused state office or public office, or in any way you will have been deemed to have contravened Chapter 6 of the Constitution, then you will be disqualified. Then lastly, if you have had all possibility of appeal or review of a relevant sentence or decision regarding your disqualification fully exhausted. So those are the qualifications that we've outlined and grounds for which one can be disqualified as a presidential candidate. I'd like to go through a few other important things. According to our laws, you need to have a proposer and a seconder. Regulation 38B of the Election General Regulation 2010 outlines that a proposer and a seconder for a political party shall be voters registered in the respective electoral areas. So they must be registered voters to be able to propose or second you. Then the Elections Act also stipulates that supporters have to be members of the candidate's political party. These are regulations related to those who are coming in as candidates from political parties. We have a different set of requirements for independent candidates. First, one cannot, for you to run as an independent candidate, you cannot be a member of a party. So you cannot be a member of a party, a political party, for at least 3 months immediately before the date of the election. And for that, I think you've already, for those who are running as independent candidates, you've already received the required papers from the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties confirming that you have not been a member of a political party 3 months immediately before the date of the election. So that is one of the documents that we'll be looking at and reviewing. Then you've all submitted to us, independent candidates, a symbol, which is required by law. You also are required to have 2,000 supporters who are not members of any party, but they must be registered voters from each of the majority counties. So you also require 48,000 signatures from at least 24 counties, but they cannot be members of political parties. We'll be checking that very carefully. You're also required to have a proposer and a seconder, and those shall be those people who are registered voters, but they also cannot be members of political parties. Those are the requirements that relate to independent candidates. Then you will have a series of forms that you'll be required to fill. So you have Form 12, nomination paper for presidential election. You have Form 13, which is a statutory declaration for purpose of nomination for election. I think you will find in your folders some of these samples, or you will be provided samples of those forms so that you know exactly what you're supposed to fill. Very important on the passport. We need to have passport-size photos from all the aspirants, and we need 2 passport-size photographs. And we need those provided both in hard copy and soft copy so that we can be able to upload them. And remember that those are the photographs that will be used on the ballot. So just be careful where you're taking the pictures and the background. We have seen some very interesting pictures in interesting places that you would not want to have that on your ballot. So please just make sure that the picture that you send to us is one that you would like the Kenyan people to identify you as. This means that it must be in a JPEG format, and it must be in color. The background must be white with no shadows. The photo size must have a maximum size of 1 MB. The resolutions must be 1028 by 768 pixels. Right? Is that correct? Immaculate, is that correct? The dimensions? Okay. Sorry?
Repeat the dimensions.
The dimensions are 1028 times 768 pixels. The aspect ratio of the camera should be 4:3. The photo must be of portrait orientation. So I really need to emphasize this because we have already seen some of the pictures, and we just want to be sure that you send what is accurate, what is required, so that we don't send you back. I think that is. Immaculate reminds me that the presentation will be shared so that you have all the information, so that you read and you know exactly what you are required to have, so that ukija KICC tarehe 28 ama tarehe 29 tusije tukakurudisha. I think there's one more point that I really need to emphasize here today on Chapter 6. I will emphasize it again here. The chairman has set up a committee, and Chapter 6 Integrity Committee, that brings together various actors, that brings together the EACC, the Commission on Higher Education, that brings together those who are charged with the responsibility of checking on your bankruptcy status, those that have been given the responsibility of checking whether you're of sane mind. I don't know whether they are part of it. But we just we don't want this to come as a surprise to anybody, that we will be looking at all these qualifications and that you are still aspirants until the time that you are declared candidates. and that all these provisions that are there in the Constitution, we'll be looking at them very carefully. We will be looking at your signatures very, very carefully to make sure that they meet the requirements of the law, and we'll be looking at all the documents, including university degrees that are required for aspirants and their deputies, so that we make sure that we are meeting the expectations of our Constitution and our laws. With that, I thank you very much and hand back the mic to our deputy. Actually, I'm going to forget and say this. I always call our deputy cabinet secretary because I can't pronounce the other term that is very complicated. So I'm handing over to our deputy cabinet secretary to take you through the next stages. Thank you very much.
All right, IEBC there meeting presidential aspirants at the Lillian Towers, just spelling out the rules of engagement, some of the qualifications one needs to have in order for them to vie as a president, whether with a party or with independent. But on the next split screen we have, the next picture we have is at the West Bank, where U.S. President Donald Trump is headed to meet the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas. Remember, earlier on there were protests against Trump, and not very, some were ugly scenes, protests that turned into a riot. President Trump has already met with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, now headed to meet Mahmoud Abbas. Remember, Palestine and Israel have not been in any direct talks in about 3 years, and Donald Trump says this is one of the hardest deals they've had to negotiate and see whether they can sign. So we'll definitely bring you more details on that. But now let's come back into studio where my guest, Joy Brenda Mdivo, who is a lawyer and political analyst, as well as John Kagusha, who is a governance expert. We will be taking a look at the IEBC, the timelines. The IEBC currently meeting with presidential aspirants. Thank you very much for coming in. I'll start with you, John, with the kind of timelines that we've seen, what the IEBC has already done, what it has not done. Do you think we are on course?
Definitely, we are generally on course because if you look at what had been said to be done in the month of May, quite a number of the issues have been done. So we can say that we are on course, but never mind, we have a lot of challenges to surmount for us to get where we want to get. And one of the things you have noticed is that the deadlines have been moved every other day. I do not think there's any deadline we have stuck to. Even when
extending deadlines,
they have been extending all the time. Every time. If you can remember, like the issue of resolution of the disputes, they had allocated, or the time which was allocated at first was 10 days after the nomination process. And that was to be just about before 10th of May. But as we are now, we have not cleared this process. I think we have actually extended again up to 30th of this month. And you see, this also coincides again with the period now where we are supposed to have completed the nomination process with the IEBC. Because now after 30th, actually, if you do not have, if you've not completed the dispute, then you don't have a candidate for that position. Yeah, so generally we are on course, but we have challenges.
Joe, do you have a problem with how we have been pushing forward deadlines, like John says?
It's like what I was telling you during the break. If you've watched an episode of Telematch or Takeshi's Castle, it's like these guys have a race to run, but there are these guys on the sidelines who are just throwing obstacles in their path to make it as difficult as possible. I understand that under the new constitution, people have rights and they want to try them on for size and see whether they can actually be given to them. And everybody reserves that right to do so, but sometimes you wish common sense would prevail. Because with the timelines that we have set for ourselves, with what we say needs to be done, it is sometimes it looks like mission impossible for the IEBC. I opined here on Sunday, and I think I still reiterate that proposal, is that we have over-legislated our election process. We want to micromanage every little step of the election process. Set this timeline.
Could it be because the stakes are too high?
But why are the stakes that high? That is the question that we need to ask ourselves. Why is it do or die? This is supposed to be public service. It should be selflessness. It needs to be something that's a sacrifice. But in Kenya, we've made one major mistake. We have made leadership very lucrative in the sense that it has very high monetary return. It also has a lifestyle change. That's why you find people, once they have become members of parliament, find it difficult becoming Raia once again, because you get used to a certain lifestyle where it's unsustainable, basically. We need to come to a place where we have a long, hard look at ourselves and say, look, if it's public